name for solid carbon dioxide. Sharon?
What is dry ice?
That is right.
I'd like Christmas for 100.
U.S.-Soviet arms talks get underway.
СССР выступает за то, чтобы иметь нормальные, стабильные отношения с Соединенными Штатами.
These cavalry soldiers are standing by 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They are guarding a place where east meets west.
Единым стальным монолитом идут на Красной площади танки гвардейцы.
As long as they are able to see that we are ready, then hopefully they will just stay on their side of the fence.
If they do not, Private Eric Oquist of Grand Rapids, Minnesota says he's not afraid to die for freedom.
It's the price you gotta pay to serve your country.
Ever since I was a little kid, I've always had an interest in military vehicles. Things like the BF-109, the Bismarck, and the Tiger made an impression on me at a very young age. Yeah, I was a hardcore variable, but that's beside the point. Anyway, shows like dogfights lived in my head for weeks upon weeks on end, as the image of machines just duking it out really piqued my interest as an autistic 10-year-old. Because of this obsession of mine, in 2014 I got the game War Thunder. In fact, if you look at my channel, most of my videos would have been about War Thunder. But there was just something about War Thunder that didn't feel right. In my 11 years of playing the game, I couldn't put my finger on it, but for some reason, the game just didn't feel fun anymore. I don't know. Maybe I'm just imagining things. But anyway, a few years ago I saw Spookston, yes, that Spookston, talk about an upcoming tank game that was in a very early release state. I saw it and I thought to myself, that looks pretty good. And then I went back to getting cast in War Thunder for the 30th time. I decided that I would try out the demo. I thought it was good, but I only got like 5 frames because my PC was abysmal. But I decided that once I got a better PC, I would at least think about buying it. When I did, I never really thought about it, but one night, after dealing with Kingdom Come Deliverance's terrible combat system, I bought it out of pure annoyance, wanting a game that would, at the very least, give me some enjoyment. So, on the night of May 31st, 2025, I finally booted up.
GHPC! Identified! Fire! On the way! Target! Cease fire! Hit fire! Fire! Fuck, he's looking at us! Getting picked up! Reengage!
So you're probably wondering, what the fuck is GHPC? First off, language. There are children watching. Probably. But second, it's a tank game made by Radiant Simulations, released on Steam in 2022. And it is without a doubt one of the best tank games I've seen in a very long time. Technically it's still in early access, so you will be getting bugs. No early access is without them. But to be honest, there aren't many game-breaking bugs that I could find. The roadmap on the website details what will be coming until the full release version of the game. As for when that will happen, has not been disclosed at this time. But so far they're doing a pretty good job, so I say let them cook. But what do I know? So I asked the lead dev, ActionScripter, a few questions regarding the game, and parts of this interview will be sprinkled throughout the video. Also, instead of hearing Action's voice, which you can listen to on any of the dev streams, you get to hear the voice over Dorn. How would you describe Gunner Heat PC to someone who is unfamiliar?
Gunner Heat PC is a sim-like game about tanks. It's a blend of game and simulator, intended to depict the interesting parts of modern armored combat without imposing too much on the player. And for the armor nerds among us, it's a faithful recreation of late Cold War vehicles, showcasing their abilities in the actual conflict they were intended for.
What made you want to make Gunner Heat PC?
I grew up playing the Novalogic series of sim games. They had a consistent theme: easy to learn and play, action-packed, and depicting enough details about the vehicles and weapons that you felt like it was realistic. One of my favorites was Armored Fist 3, a game where you take a simulated Abrams company through a variety of tough missions. When I was older, I started looking for a more recent tank game that would recapture the feeling of Armored Fist 3. I tried all the usual suspects, but I found to my dismay that all the big tank games now are free-to-play Skinner boxes designed to lure people in with cool tanks and turn them into whales paying for premium content to ease frustration. I found this not only disappointing, but frankly, repulsive, and it motivated me to find my own solution. At the time, I was working as a simulation game developer, dealing with weapon system training. I had all the skills required to make my own game, and so I did. Starting in 2017, I built and distributed a playable prototype. In 2020, I recognized the limits of my own abilities and brought in a few talented and specialized individuals to form a team. The game hit Early Access Alpha in 2022, and we're working toward full release from there. I've always had the same overriding motivation for GHPC. I'm making the game I wanted to play. All the things I miss about Armored Fist 3. The streamlined controls, the crew voices, the verisimilitude, the variety of vehicles and scenarios are the things I prioritized in the creation of GHPC. But there's more to it, of course. With total creative freedom, we're beyond chasing the past, and my team and I are shaping the game into something completely our own. We're writing a love letter to tanks and building the tank game that the next generation of armor nerds will hopefully look back on fondly in turn.
But what about the setting? I mean, where the hell is this game even set? For those that are a bit into Cold War history, the area our vehicles are fighting in is Fulda in 1985. And for those who don't know where or what that is, allow me to explain. During the Cold War, Germany was split into East and West, along with ceding its eastern territories to Poland and the USSR. Ever since tensions began to simmer between the East and West, both sides drew up plans for a Soviet invasion and a NATO defense of Western Germany. Thus, two axes of attack were drawn up. The first involved sending at least 3 to 4 field armies, depending on the source, across the North German plain. The area, being plains and flat grounds, were ideal for armored formations to cross, but the opposite was true for any counterattack NATO had in stockpile. The second was situated in central Germany, near a town called Fulda. The area surrounding the town is extremely hilly and filled with forest, so why was this route chosen for a Soviet attack? The advantage lies in the areas behind Fulda. If you follow the valley of Fulda, you'll end up in Frankfurt. Now, why is this important? Well, Frankfurt was, and still is, Germany's financial capital. If you follow the river Main, you reach the town Mainz, and consequently, the river Rhine. At this point, the possibility of Sentag, or the Central Army Group, being cut in half becomes a very real and possible threat. Even worse, further north lies Bonn, the West German capital at the time, and beyond that, the Ruhr industrial region. A loss of this magnitude will make NATO seriously consider pulling out of Germany. Thus, the Fulda Gap, as many would dub it, would be held by the US 5th Corps, and at the town of Fulda itself would be the 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment, or the 11th ACR. Should any attack occur, the regiment will fight a delayed action against the entirety of the 8th Guards Army before reinforcements from either the 3rd Armored Division or the 5. Panzerdivision would arrive. And looking at the unit designations for some of the American vehicles, we get the glory of being first in line of the Soviet advance.
The team has some headcanon about how it could have happened based on stories we've heard from the time period the game is set in, that being the mid-1980s. Whether this makes it into the expanded campaign system or we leave it ambiguous remains to be seen. Part of what makes this setting so fascinating is that lots of people thought it was going to happen, and the global superpowers were preparing and training for it for decades. That's an extremely volatile situation, and we should all be thankful it never went hot.
Currently, at the time of writing this, there are 16 unique tanks and IFVs in the game. If you add their variants and other light vehicles, that number rises to around 50. There are 4 playable factions in the game at this time. The US Army and the Bundeswehr, the West German Army, formed the NATO forces. For the Soviets, we have the Soviet Union, obviously, and the Nationale Volksarmee, or the East German Army. If I name all the vehicles and variants of this game, it's going to take more than 10 minutes, so I'll be sticking to armored combat vehicles for the time being, and giving a brief description on them. The US Army has 2 main tanks, the older M60 with and without the laser rangefinder, and the M1 Abrams. the regular and the IP version, which was a new vehicle around this time, so if you're an armor nerd, don't be expecting the M1A1 with the 120mm anytime soon. As for IFVs, there is the M2 Bradley, and the M113 armor personnel carrier. The M113 has a 50 cal M2 HMG, also known as the Ma Deuce, Browning's crowning achievement, while the Bradley has the 25mm Bushmaster that many of us armor nerds know and love. Along with the Bushmaster, it also comes with tow missiles, however, it does lack a laser rangefinder. The Bundeswehr is still quite new to the game. As of writing, there are only 2 unique German vehicles, excluding variants. As of right now, there is only one German tank, the Leopard 1, and the Marder 1 Schützenpanzer, along with their variants. More will be coming to the German roster in the near future. The Soviets have a bunch of armored vehicles. The oldest that are in the game are the T-62 and T-64 tanks, and the Bojovaria Machina Piechoti 1, or the BMP-1 series of IFVs. All 3 used during the 60s, 20 years before the game takes place. The BMP-1 comes with either the Malyutka or the Conqueror's ATGM. The former, the Malyutka, is the first man-portable ATGM, so it comes with all the benefits and downsides of being the first in anything. The BMP-2 is an upgraded version, replacing the 73mm cannon for a 30mm autocannon, which has the dispersion of Pico during that one CSGO game. Moving on, T-80B is by far the most advanced and most common tank. Along with the laser rangefinder, it has its own fire control system, like the Abrams, making it possibly the most fierce Soviet tank in the game, at least in my opinion. For armored personnel carriers / recon vehicles, the Soviets get the Boyovaya Razveteriana Dozomaya Machina 2, or BRDM 2, and the Drona Transpiotor, or BTR 60. Both of these vehicles have a 14.5mm autocannon with no night sight, no magnifying optics, and no stabilizer, which can make some missions pretty fun. Okay, so the Nationale Volksarmee received hand-me-downs from the Soviets, so pretty much all of their vehicles are outdated or have already been covered. They actually used T-3485s in some of their stockpiles well into the late Cold War. Their most common tank is the T-54 or T-55 series of tanks, a design from the late 40s. Jesus Christ, that is fucking old. While it has a stabilizer, like the T-62 and some variants of the T-64, range has to be manually acquired, either through the diagram on the right or by guesswork and working closer to the target. However, not all of the NVA's arsenal are outdated vehicles. They also receive variants of T-72 tanks from the Soviets, making it their most advanced vehicle. With a laser rangefinder and an autoloader, the T-72 is not a tank to be taken lightly. And finally, the Plavayushi Tank 76, or PT-76, which is an amphibious light tank with a 76mm gun. And those are the vehicles that are currently in the game. But you don't care about some guy nerding out over Cold War tech. You want to see the... Gunner Heat PC has a pretty simple set of controls. You can easily get a grip on all of the controls within a few minutes. As ActionScripter said, it's a blend of game and simulator, a simulate, making it both easy to understand and extremely fun to play. It's not an arcade game like World of Tanks, nor is it a milsim where you have to devote your next weekend to understand the controls. In my opinion, it strikes that perfect balance between the two, being fun to both sides of the armored milsim spectrum. As for the actual combat itself, it is extremely immersive. The crew inside the tank calling out targets and getting audibly distressed as the tank buckles and creaks under its own weight, and the intensity of combat really makes you feel like you are there. How did you get such terrifying crew voices? I feel like I'm right there with the crew when they see a tow missile coming at them.
Direction. We spent a lot of time reviewing crew comms, including both training footage and actual combat recordings. Through this process, we got a sense for what kind of tone we wanted the actors to convey in order to get that authenticity across. There's a good deal of variation in how real crews handle intense action based on personalities and the kind of opponents they're facing, but we deliberately went with the agitated side of the spectrum because it's a video game and that's more exciting. From there, it was just a matter of feedback and revisions until we were happy with the results. The fact that the actors are also very good at what they do just made the whole thing come together.
And how does that translate into the game?
Watch out, either left! Underneath the gun! Identified! Fire!
pretty good, I'd say. But what about damage models? Pretty much all tank games, or any game that has a combat element for that matter, have to have some way of modeling damage. For tank games on the arcade side of things, they can be modeled as hit points. If players yearn for a more realistic approach, the devs need to model penetration values to have some sort of semblance to real life. In my opinion, this approach makes the game more fun, as the player must play very carefully in order to achieve victory, as one well-placed hit will mean the loss of the vehicle. Gunner Heat PC is one of these games that utilizes this approach, and it does it extremely well. How did your team get the damage/penetration data for the game?
We take a combination approach to penetration data. We use documented live fire test results if available, then RHAE numbers after that. What this means is that if we know for a specific real-world result, say the glasses plate of the T-72M can resist M774 darts up to X meters, we tune the in-game numbers to match that result. Raw numbers are a good fallback and a way to contextualize the test results, but the test always takes precedence. Using this method, we've been able to deduce missing performance data within a reasonable margin. Due to this approach, the final number values in GHPC are not necessarily our claims about what each projectile or armor piece is rated for. They're just the ones that make all the matchups turn out the way we expect based on the available historical record. If we need to use basic numbers, we reject sources that seem speculative or unreasonable. We prefer sources like manufacturer data or military reports as opposed to things like wiki pages or blog posts. With the amount of caveats involved around numbers, we've simply chosen not to directly reveal them in the game. This also saves us from having to interact with people who enjoy the sport of second-guessing values, as seen in places like the War Thunder forums.
But the combat system, or the gameplay for that matter, is incomplete in my opinion. I mean, yeah, you can play with just the base audio. It's already pretty immersive. But to get the true Gunner Heat PC experience, you need to listen to the music. The music in this game is absolutely phenomenal. In fact, the only songs you will hear in this video, aside from the VHS intro, the FMC Bradley vid, the ending, and the drive reference coming up, are from the Gunner Heat PC OST. In total, there were 11 different songs in the soundtrack. 6 of these songs are combat music, while the rest are either for the main menu or play when the mission is over. 2 songs need to be earned via doing specific missions in the game. Target Acquired is achieved by completing the mission Pushing Tin Part 1, while the other, Broken Arrow, is achieved by completing Longer Road. We'll get into Longer Road later. Each of the songs that play in combat really fit the theme of the game. They come in 4 phases, each representing the severity of the situation. They are Calm, Anticipation, Action, and Frantic, with Calm playing whenever you are not in combat, and Frantic playing if you have lost your vehicle or are critically damaged. The campaign is still being worked on, and is very basic with only a handful of missions. You can choose to play as either NATO or the Warsaw Pact, and can complete missions to gain more points for your side, while draining the other side of points. But the Gunner Heat team have stated that they intend to expand on this feature. However, in my opinion, the main appeal to Gunner Heat PC currently is not the campaign, it's the wide variety of single-player missions the game has to offer. Currently, there are around 100 single-player instant action missions in the game, excluding the tutorials, which give you a pretty good start on getting familiar with the different vehicles present in Gunner Heat PC before you start working through the list of combat missions. There's also a subsection of instant action missions called Command Mode. Here, you can actually command your friendly forces before and during a mission, so that you can plan out their movement and not have them charge in like a bunch of maniacs. Now, there are some missions that are to be taken less seriously, and by some I mean one in particular. The April Fool's mission Rally, where you have to drive your commander to the end of a trail to receive a reward. If you played the mission when it first came out, you were met with the best tank in the game. If not, oh well, sucks to be you. As for the actual combat missions, they have amazing replayability. Missions like Silver Dart and Late to the Party are fun missions to play over and over again. On your first run through each mission, you'll most likely die if you were not too careful, and even then, in some missions the enemy will pull a move on you were not expecting, getting you and your teammates killed. The game teaches you the unpredictability of combat, where, unless you have the advantage of foresight, you really cannot predict the enemy's first move, and are at the mercy of the situation you find yourself in. And no set of missions illustrates this more perfectly than Longer Road and Pact Partnership. Longer Road and Pact Partnership are some of the most terrifying missions in a non-horror game I've ever seen. I won't spoil too much of the missions itself, but I will give you the mission briefings. This one is for Longer Road. Fragmentary Order, Frago. You and your wingman have been cut off by enemy forces for the past 6 hours. Your wingman has his fire control knocked out, and yours could go offline any minute. Drive along the plotted waypoints, through enemy lines, and join Bravo 2-2. And for Pact Partnership, Situation. It is well into the night. Your company has just broken through enemy lines by the narrowest margin. All your tanks are damaged and cannot move far under their own power. You and your wingman BTR are the only 2 vehicles that can move acceptably under their own power. Your task is to go back down the way we attacked in order to get to Objective Partnership and link up with the Soviets, so they can get tanks in to recover our disabled vehicles at Objective Rescue. When you reach the Soviet forces, leave your BTRs there loaded with the wounded. Return to our position using the Soviet tanks. If you can't see, call in illumination flares. Both missions play at night as well, so if your night sights are taken out, you are entirely reliant on illumination flares fired by friendly artillery, which only lasts for a few seconds before plunging you back into darkness. Pact Partnership is just slightly more terrifying in my opinion. Remember, the BTR-60 has a 14.5mm autocannon. It cannot penetrate enemy tanks. It also does not have a night sight for the cannon, making any accurate fire impossible without the help of illumination rounds. It is a hard mission, and you will have to plan out your course accordingly. That isn't to say Longer Road isn't intense, far from it. The fact that you have to follow the road in total darkness, surrounded by enemies, is a feeling I'm sure none of us would like to experience in real life. To give you a depiction of how terrifying a Longer Road can be, here is footage of my first playthrough of the mission.
Gunner heat tank! Identified! On target! Re-engage! Kill him! Target! Gunner heat PC! Traverse left on! Identified! Fire! He's got us holding down! Gunner coming! Rush! Traverse right! Run! Target! Re-engage! Next target! Gunner coming! Rush! Re-engage! Target! Ceasefire! Firepower saber on the way! North! Re-engage! He's looking at us!
Which on? Oh god. Players.
Gunner, Zemo tank! Identified! Fire! Target! Re-engage! Target! Target! Off!
But is this really a realistic depiction of armored combat? To answer this question, I asked the ActionScripter. How realistic would you say Gunner Heat PC is?
GHPC is extremely realistic in a specific set of traits, while streamlining or skipping others. It's kind of a hybrid realism. There's a full fidelity in vehicle modeling, armor mechanics, ballistics, optics, and the core mechanics of the vehicle's gunnery systems. At the same time, we take shortcuts in driving controls, mission pacing, and things like maintenance or support tasks. It's tuned to give the player a hit of immersion and an appreciation for the unique flavor for each vehicle and its place in the pecking order without getting bogged down by switchology and lengthy mission briefings. Realism is ultimately subjective. Some people would say that the lack of destructible buildings or full interior modeling disqualifies it as a realistic game. We prefer to focus on the things that actually matter during tank combat, and we believe our chosen set of features translates to a very realistic feel during gameplay. For what it's worth, a lot of tankers who try the game say it takes them back to the old days and captures the feeling. That pretty much says it all.
How did you achieve that realism?
We laser focus on the aspects of each vehicle that are compelling and set it apart from the others. The weaponry, armor protection, gun sight reticles, fire control system features, night sights, all these things are meticulously researched during the creation process. We go as far as to figure out which specific variants of each vehicle would have been present near the Fulda Gap in 1985, and we tailor our depictions to match. From there, the technical underpinnings of the game carry it. Our ballistics and armor systems are fully custom, and we built them to portray tank combat at a level where the individual variations in vehicle and ammunition tech have the appropriate impact. It gives us a compelling bonus feature. The real-world countries each fielded armored vehicles that were optimized to fight the other side's armor in the German countryside, and the design choices that were made are reflected in the way combat plays out in GHPC.
How realistic would you like it to be?
There are always our personal wishlist features that we hope to look at when there's more time. For example, I'd love to be able to tune the revised version of the campaign to reflect the real-life order of battle for each military unit in the CENTAG, so the numbers and distributions of vehicles on each side actually have an effect on the progress of the war. Ultimately though, we've got the game at a realism level we're generally happy with. If nothing else was ever added except for what's on the roadmap, I'd still be proud of what we've created.
I also asked Bundesfaust, a real-life Abrams crewman, his thoughts on the game and how realistic it is. The interview is cut short for the sake of brevity, but I linked the full interview and his channel in the description below.
How realistic would you say Garnet Heat PC is?
I think to a degree, like as far as taking into consideration like what from my understanding, what the game is trying to go after, which is an accessible, but simultaneously like almost gateway simulator like game. I think it does a fairly decent job. There's a couple things that if I really want to, I could go on an hour-long tangent about everything that I find to be unrealistic, but this is also coming from someone who, one, does this for real, and two, plays an unholy amount of Steel Beasts, which is like a legit simulator. So I think considering that it's supposed to be like, you know, like an entry-level simulator type thing, I think it does a pretty good job of being realistic as far as implementing a lot of like the fire control, realistic ballistics, and having like internal modules for the vehicles, like things like that. I think it does a fairly decent job. There's certain things that I would have qualms with, like some of the, like the stabilizers. Like if you're firing on the move over, you know, like relatively flat but like still, you know, bumpy terrain, real world you wouldn't have any issue like doing that. Just because like, whether it's T-72, T-64, T-80, M1, M60 to a degree, you're not going to have any issue with that. But I don't know if it's a programming thing or if it's a deliberate decision by the developers to make it so that like there's a chance that your gun tube is not going to be aligned with your sights when you fire, and that round's either going super short or way over. But that's the main thing as far as like the combat that I find to be like unrealistic. It feels like you have to shoot while stationary, rather than being able to maneuver while shooting.
I see. So, going off of that, would you say that it gives a realistic depiction of peer-to-peer tank combat, at least like in the 1980s, where the game is set?
I think to a degree, yeah. As far as like, because another thing too is it also doesn't implement like the amount of just like bigger picture like maneuver and planning and stuff, because to my understanding, the missions are developed or designed in a way that just throws you into the action, like basic as hell, like objective, and okay, cool, go, you're, you know, thrown to the wolves. So as far as like having those kind of engagements, like meeting engagements that are realistic, I don't particularly think so, because a lot of that is like, okay, you're not finding out about the enemy, you just kind of know about it beforehand, so there's no real like, oh shoot, that's a T-72, that kind of jump scare realization. But I think as far as like implementing like fire control, I like the fire commands with the AI. I think that's very cool. I think the engagement process, like as far as like target prioritization, can be off sometimes. I'm sure that I've had plenty of instances where I'm looking at T-72, that's definitely a greater threat, and my TC wants me to engage a BTR off to our flank.
Or like a BDRM.
Yeah, just some random target. I'm like, nah, I'm shooting this. The same thing happens in Steel Beast too. It's just an AI thing.
Okay.
But I think for the most part, like for what the game is aiming for, it does a pretty decent job of simulating it. Obviously, because it's just you in the vehicle, you have some of the War Thunderisms of there's no delay between you making a decision and then trying to communicate it to your crew. So there's some things that are like you'll be in an area where the AI will see you, but if it was a real crew, there'd definitely be a big delay. You'd already be like, rolling up on them by the time they notice you. That's the only real thing I noticed. Though, other than that, I think it does a pretty good job of emulating armored warfare.
We'll have more from Bundesfaust in a bit, but as you can see, overall, many people think that the game is very realistic. But being a realistic tank game is not just about getting damage data right, or coding the trajectory of each shell type. It's GHPC's depiction of combat and war itself that sets it apart from other quote-unquote realistic tank games. A depiction of pure horror and merciless brutality. It should go without saying that war is bad, but many of us really don't understand what war is, and have lots of misconceptions about war and tanks in general. Take for example the Ukraine war. Most of us recall seeing columns of destroyed Russian armor and thinking to ourselves, wow, Russian tanks suck. This obviously is not true, they're just being used wrong. You can watch a plethora of videos about this topic, but for the sake of time, I'll just put some of my recommended videos on the screen. Tank combat, like all forms of combat, is not pretty, and least of all glorious. And I think that is perfectly illustrated in GHPC. Like in real life, the combat in this game is unforgiving and brutal. The AAR, or After Action Report, details what happened to the crew and components inside the vehicle after each hit. Every combatant isn't just a number. They're a human being, torn to shreds by spall and shrapnel. What inspired you to make the game brutal?
That's how tank combat is. A consistent issue in some other tank games is that every encounter is a slugfest where you hammer away at each other until someone's HP is depleted. It paints an odd picture of tank duels as some kind of dramatic boss battle between opposing hero characters. In reality, it's short and devastating and inglorious. You probably don't even see the thing that kills you. With no warning, metal shards tear through your fighting compartment like bullets, and you're gone. Whoever shoots first wins. That high-stakes combat feels more real. It makes the game way more tense, and in my opinion, is a dose of disillusionment that could do some good in the genre.
The brutality in this game doesn't just end with the tank's crew. The game also models what happens to dismounted infantry when they come face to face with armored vehicles. And the results are not pretty. It is incredibly graphic, and that's the point. When you're creating a realistic game about war, it should be your obligation to show its effects, to show your audience that there is no glory in this.
Gore presents an interesting challenge because it brings in it a lot of baggage. You have some people who are just opposed to it outright as gratuitous or shocking. You have others who fetishize it and demand more of it for entertainment. For our part, we just wanted to show some kind of plausible consequence for a human body being hit by a high-caliber shell or a strong blast wave. That motivation is reflected in how we implemented the feature. It's quick and unceremonious, and it leaves the body looking sad more than anything. We don't have a cool shower of finely crafted gibs or a meat explosion or turning dudes into a smear on the ground. Just a visual nod to the devastation and then moving on. If people see it as sobering, that means we did our job well.
But checkmate, you're probably just looking too deep into it. It's just a tank game. What political message might it have?
Every piece of art is political at some level, even if the author denies it or genuinely doesn't recognize it. GHPC doesn't have much in the way of overt politics since it's so focused on the mechanics of tank combat rather than the causes of war in the first place. Despite the game's premise, we think war in real life is messy and bad, a thing to avoid rather than exult in. That's reflected in tons of design choices in GHPC. The combat encounters are harshly lethal and give no repairs or crew revives. The AAR mode music is somber even when you win the battle. The damage log describes the extreme injuries done to the people in the tanks. The mission results list losses instead of achievements. The tankers scream in terror instead of sounding badass and collected in combat. At one point, the art director, Harry, said, "We want to make the player sad." It's a funny way to put it, but it's more true than not. The team comes from a variety of places all over the world and takes a dim view of blind patriotism. So we do our best to cut through jingoistic influences and truly understand how the vehicles perform. This means questioning accepted wisdom and cultural lore and finding trustworthy sources for everything, even the things we feel confident about. We depict all crews as equally trained and competent, with only their equipment affecting their performance. The end result is that we're constantly accused of bias in all directions by people who prefer to see their favorite side's vehicles as more powerful or their soldiers as more human. And then there's the way we do business. We handcraft everything in the game with no generative AI or other artificiality. The base game costs a one-time price upfront with free updates as we make progress. There are no premium vehicles, subscriptions, or gated features. We've stayed independent, declining publisher offers and government contracts in order to avoid compromising our goals. We pay our contractors a fair wage by Western standards. We avoid crunch culture and make sure people have time to decompress. The company is owned and run entirely by people who are doing actual development work on GHPC. Our attitude and the way we move permeates everything we create. The fact that this is made by a group of artists who care deeply about doing the right thing is going to affect the game, and while politics and art can be a pretty nebulous thing, we can only do our best and let our work speak for itself.
In the same interview with Bundesfaust, I also asked his opinion on armored combat and the dangers of it. Here's what he had to say about it.
How dangerous would you say tank combat is in real life, like a real life engagement?
Extremely, for both parties. Not just, you know, risk of like being like hit with, you know, a anti-tank weapon or a you know, by a weapon system that's capable of, you know, inflicting, you know, massive damage on your vehicle, but also just to the crew. The tank does not care. This is in like every video ever where someone talks about a tank. So tank doesn't care. It'll kill you just as quickly as it'll kill the enemy, which is still very true. Like the gun recoils 12 inches, and that thing weighs like just under. It's like 4,600 pounds. So it's like the weight of it's the weight of an SUV. So unless you like getting hit by cars, that's you know probably not very much fun. But things like that, the gun moving, there's a good reason why you're not supposed to have your loader sticking their arms and themselves above the gun, especially if you're moving over terrain. Yeah. There's ways to do that. You have EL uncoupled, so it disconnects the gun from the sights, so it just doesn't, you know, move as long as you have the gun on safe. But there's things like that. Just simple complacencies too, like especially under fire, and that's kind of the, you know, the crappy reality is like if you have any bit of complacency in, you know, in training, it's gonna happen in combat and you're gonna get seriously hurt, and then you're also being shot at. So things like that, like it's heavy machinery. It's like if you take, it's like operating a construction vehicle, but you're being shot at. Like how well are you gonna, you know, be able to operate that piece of equipment safely without, you know, hurting yourself, so you can still, you know, inflict damage on the enemy. And then of course there's just the, you know, the overall hazards of like receiving direct and indirect fire from different weapon systems. That's kind of a no-brainer. Like, yeah, no shit, you're gonna, you know, you're probably gonna die if you get if you get pinned by like, you know, another tank.
125mm Sabo.
Yeah, like it's, you know, and it's also just not fair either. Like it's very like if you're seen first, you are very likely getting shot first. Just tanks in general, like, you know, anywhere, most places in the world, your modern main battle tank is just capable of finding things in day or night through smoke, through dust, and just as long as everything is right as far as your meteorological data, your gun lay, the range in your ballistic computer, like you're probably hitting that target, and that target is gonna be very upset. And it's just a matter of like, oh, I can see him, so I can basically shoot him. Like, there's very few cases where it's like someone sees the other person first, and the other tank has time to react. So it's very unforgiving. It's very brutal. Even in training, there's a lot of stuff. It's even just hazards to like, you know, dismounts as well. Like especially in training, like there's especially emphasis on like being aware of friendly troops around you, because, and also those troops being aware of you, because they have to give you enough space, and you have to, you know, be knowledgeable of where their whereabouts are, so you know, okay, when we start getting into an engagement, like, where can we move to without running our own guys over? There's a million videos of exactly what happens when you don't take that into consideration happening in Ukraine, of BMPs dropping off troops, they start getting engaged with anti-tank, and then they just reverse and run their own guys over.
In your opinion, is tank combat like terrifying? Does it terrify you?
Yeah. I think just combat in general, like, and that's kind of something that could be very easily misconstrued as just like, oh, he's scared, he's gonna, you know, he's a coward. Like, there's some people that like, we'll hear that and go like, oh, you know, he's scared of fighting. Yeah. And a lot of those people, those people are gonna be, you know, would be terrified of warfare too. That's just kind of like the nature of things. It's a very grueling and unfair and horrible thing. So I think the idea that me not looking a certain direction for a fraction of a second will cost my crew's life, as well as my own, I think that is really scary. It also, I mean, pushes me to be, you know, way better, because that would really suck. I mean, like, I've never been shot at, I've never been in combat, so I don't actually know. But I just, from talking to other tankers that were in during the GWAT era, like, even fighting insurgents is just, you know, like, it's just a scary thing, because it's just like out of nowhere. It's always just some peripheral target that's just, you know, tries to engage you. I guess the best way I could explain it is it feels like if you've ever fallen off of a decent height, you know, backwards, where you feel yourself falling and you're just thinking about the inevitable, you're gonna hit your back on the ground, but you can't see it coming. It's almost like that. The entire fight is just continuously trying to like brace for what feels like is inevitable, which is, you know, getting hit by a main gun round or a missile, or, you know, play anti-tank weapon or something. Well, as you're just watching, you know, through your sights, trying to just do your best to, you know, engage with targets you can see. Like, who's to say there isn't another one off where you're not looking and stuff. But yeah, definitely, for sure.
If you were still not convinced, or are probably thinking, he hasn't even seen combat, what would he know? Here are some quotes from people who have been in combat. Our first bad experience was when our tank ran over a landmine. We were lucky, however, and the only damage was a couple of flattened bogey wheels and the rubber tread blown off of a few track blocks. We continued on, and I was firing the 75mm gun at a German tank next to a barn. I had fired one armor-piercing round when all of a sudden we received a direct hit to the turret. The shell hit the cupola ring, and a flash of fire hit my periscope. The shell blew the tank commander's hatch open, took part of his head off, and then proceeded to blow off the anti-aircraft gun and mount. Bill Hay was killed instantly, and he fell down on my back, covering me with blood. By the time I could get Bill off my back, the assistant driver had bailed out and the loader had crawled through the turret and out the assistant driver's hatch. Instead of checking to see where the gun tube was located, all I could think about was getting out of the tank, since when they hit you once, they generally kept hitting you until the tank catches fire. We made our way to a small creek bed and headed back to the town of Sart. Everyone thought I had been hit since I was covered with my tank commander's blood. The next day, the Graves Registry people removed Bill Hay's body, and we took the tank back to battalion maintenance for repairs. We then had to remove the good shells and clean the inside of the turret. Bill's brains were on my seat and blood covered everything, including the radio. It was a very gruesome job. I never talked about the experience for years after the war. My tank was hit on April 19, 1945 in Austria. A Tiger put a round straight through us. The projectile passed through the entire fighting compartment and then the engine compartment. There were 3 officers in the tank. I was the battalion commander, the company commander Sasha Ionov, whose own tank had already been hit, and the tank commander. 3 officers, a driver mechanic, and a radio operator. When the Tiger hit us, the driver mechanic was killed outright. My entire left leg was wounded. To my right, Sasha Ionov suffered a traumatic amputation of his right leg. The tank commander was wounded, and below me sat the gunner, Lesha Romashkin. Both of his legs were blown off. A short time before this battle, we were sitting around at a meal, and Lesha said to me, "If I lose my legs, I will shoot myself. Who will need me?" He was an orphan and had no known relatives. In a strange twist of fate, this is what happened to him. We pulled Sasha out of the tank and then Lesha, and were beginning to assist in the evacuation of the others. At this moment, Lesha shot himself. Even if the tank isn't penetrated or facing near-peer threats, a tank engagement can still very easily go south, and even still be terrifying for the crew inside. We were moving from one town to another on a road used every day by the army through a secure area, which turned out not to be so secure. The first 2 tanks went on with 0 issues, then out of nowhere a small arms fire started. Thank God for that, RRB unbuttoned and with an open hatch. Then 1 minute later an RPG hit us on the ammo box for the 50 cal machine gun. Then 30 seconds later another one, and then another, and I'm sure there would have been a few more hits unless the tank behind us didn't put a few frag rounds in the building from where they were shooting. It lasted up to 10 minutes, nothing longer, and it ended suddenly as it started. The tank didn't get penetrated or catch on fire. The ammo box did. 0 penetration. We lost optics, radio, and the boxes on top of the track fenders were all shattered to pieces. 0 internal damage. The tank simply took it and kept smiling at them. If the RPG penetrated us, I'm not sure we would talk today. The ammo box was exploding for like 5 minutes, and then it stopped. Nobody was hurt. All 3 of us were a bit deaf for a few days. It's because of this why I think Garnet Heat PC does a stellar job at portraying armored warfare. While Garnet Heat PC is a game, it most certainly doesn't treat war like one. You feel the terror and stress your crew feels. You feel sorry for the enemy, who's had you decapitated with a saber round. As the adrenaline finally dies when you win a mission, you don't feel glory, only a sense of relief that the mission is complete and your crew is safe. It is a feeling seldom achieved in other military games. That is what sets Garnet Heat PC different from other tank games. Garnet Heat PC has many things going for it right now. A motivated indie team, a flourishing community that helps the devs in research, testing, and funding, a killer soundtrack, and so forth. One can see the passion that ActionScripter and the Radiant Simulations team have put into this game. It is incredible what they have accomplished despite having such a small company. It really reinforces the belief that no matter how much money one may have, if there is no passion, your product will be subpar at best. I truly think that this is currently the best tank game on the market, and I implore all people who like military games, even if you aren't interested in tanks at all, to at least give this game a try. The Steam page will be linked in the description below. When I first started writing this video, I was planning on having a more lighthearted, less serious tone with it. But as I delved deeper into the script and into Garnet Heat PC itself, the subject became much more serious, and I felt the tone had to reflect that. While there were some jokes I kept in the script, the majority of the original script I had in mind was cut out. It just didn't feel right. Garnet Heat PC isn't just a game. It's a window to what armored combat looks like, and the horror it possesses. It not only shows a Cold War gone hot scenario, but also a tragedy that is happening right now.